never forget the roots of Pride are in violent protest. We celebrate Pride Month in June because it's the anniversary of the Stonewall riots. Out of America's history, it wasn't illegal to be gay or trans, but they would use laws about lewd and lascivious behavior to terrorize gay communities. There was an unspoken rule that if you were going to be gay, you got to do it behind closed doors where no one else can see it. So they had these clubs with no windows, literally hidden in plain sight from the rest of society. Police would regularly raid these clubs. They'd go in, arrest a couple people for lewd and lascivious behavior, and they'd kick everybody out of the bar and shut it down for the night. And as police often do, they get physical and violent. These raids were ugly and hateful. And gay bars provided community, and they provided a place to gather, and they provided as much safety to be out as was possible at the time, which still was very risky. At these gay bars and clubs, you'd have gay men, lesbian women, transgender people, cross-dressers, drag queens, and you'd have a lot of homeless LGBTQ youth, because of their sexuality, who got kicked to the streets and have nowhere else to go but this community. And this community had been experiencing violent oppression, and in the 60s, the movement for civil rights for the LGBTQ community was starting to gain steam. And when you have a group of people that's building momentum fighting for their rights, and they are still experiencing violent oppression, that creates what we like to call a powder keg, where one spark can set off a huge reaction. Stonewall gets remembered because it was the catalytic event, it was the spark in the powder keg that pushed the LGBTQ rights movement to a critical mass that led us to where we are today. So in June of 1969, the Stonewall Inn is a gay bar that gets raided by the police. They storm into the bar, shut everything down, start arresting a few people, and they kick everybody out on the street. Now, normally when they do this, the crowd would disperse. A crowd of gay men, lesbian women, transgender folks, cross-dressers, drag queens, and homeless LGBTQ youth that had nowhere else to go. And this night, the crowd did not disperse. And as they're on the street and as the crowd is gathered, there's a drag king named Storm DeLivier. And the story goes that as Storm is getting handcuffed and put in the paddy wagon, they said, "Aren't you going to do something?" And that kicked off action in the riot. That a black trans woman named Marsha P. Johnson threw the first brick. Sometimes it's a brick, sometimes it's a bottle, but a black trans woman named Marsha P. Johnson is credited for throwing the first object that kicked off the violent clash with police. The crowd starts to clash with the police, and the police retreat inside of the bar with the people they have handcuffed, and they barricade themselves in, and the crowd gathers outside, and they're trying to break back into the bar. They're using parking meters as battering rams, trying to break down the door. They're trying to break in the window. They're trying to get to these police. So the police call for backup, and a riot control unit shows up and finally disperses the crowd. And over the course of the night and the next couple of days, the crowd gathers and gets loud and gets angry, and the police disperses them, and then they coalesce again in front of the bar, and it gains momentum with members of the community as more and more people join the protest. That became this symbolic moment for the LGBTQ rights movement, kicked off similar protests across the country. And that's the story of the Stonewall riots.